session. So, the Almighty God says, in all our things, in all our ways, acknowledge Him, and He shall direct our path. So, we will do just that. The prayer is going to be said by Mr. Sylvanus Horn. Let's all stand.
Friends, colleagues, supporters, well-wishers, good night. As we are about to ask the Lord's blessing to mark this significant occasion, known to us as the annual Oscar Allen Memorial Emancipation Lecture, we are reminded in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 to 6, to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. Similarly, in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13, we are sure that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. I believe our fallen brother Oscar would want us to embrace these two biblical quotes as fitting to this evening's proceedings. Let's go to God in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, as we assembled in your name, we recognize you as sovereign God who give life and breath to everything. Lord, we welcome your faithfulness in every moment you share with us. Thank you for your loving mercies that greets us at every awakening and in our lying down. Lord, we invoke your Holy Spirit to fall afresh upon us now, as we seek to share, discuss, and edify each other in this intellectual discourse. Lord, it is our hope and prayers that such sharing of knowledge will stimulate the minds of our people who are here in the audience and those who are listening via the various media platforms, that upon receiving such information, we will be like a tree planted by streams of water that bringeth forth food in due season, and that all will be so inspired in their mission to tell the story emanating from these walls to our nation children. Lord, we humbly beseech you to send an outpouring of your blessing upon this institution, the University of the West Indies Global Campus and its leadership, especially the head of site and her staff who are tasked with the responsibility, along with its stakeholders, to uphold the standards of this noble institution. Father, grant us your enabling spirit to work diligently to ensure the vision, mission, and values of this institution are upheld. And by our efforts, the nobility of this institution remained a light shining from the west. Lord, we pray for your blessings on all who are present at this function as we partner with the friends of Oscar Allen. Lord, we ask that you take charge of this evening's proceeding as we seek to advance learning, create knowledge, and foster innovation for its people deeply rooted in the Caribbean. These and many more mercies we ask through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. Oh, no. The national anthem. National anthem. Please be seated. Brethren, who gave the prayer, I'm sure Oscar would have been pleased. A bit lengthy, but he would say God first. When you ask me about Oscar, many people would have heard me saying before who Oscar was. And I would tell people he was first and foremost a Methodist preacher. Everything else was circled around that most important task. His task to love God and to love his fellow man. At this time, I'm not going to give a lot of talk, not my chance to talk. We're going to ask Dr. Risa Noel McBarnett to give the welcome. And of course, we have a long protocol list. Some of them didn't turn up, but she would see, and hopefully we would be able to welcome everybody. Dr. McBarnett.
Honorable Saboto Caesar, Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry, and Labor. Friends of Oscar Allen. Representatives from the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, ECGC, GECU, and National Lotteries Authority, heads of all religious denominations, members of the Diplomatic Corps, I wish to recognize Her Excellency Andrea Bowman, Mrs. Bowman, Dr. Adrian Fraser, former resident tutor at the University of the West Indies, Open Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I wish to also recognize Dr. Denny, Michael Denny is with us here tonight. And also I wish to recognize he holds an honorary doctorate from the UWI, Dr. or Mr. Alston Beckett Cyrus, senior public servants, yes, chairpersons of statutory boards, members of the business community, specially invited guests, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the annual Oscar Allen Memorial Emancipation Lecture 2025. We gather here at the University of the West Indies Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to commemorate the legacy of a remarkable man, Oscar Allen, whose contributions to nation building continue to inspire us all. Later in the program, we will hear from Mr. Ronnie Daniel, who will deliver a citation on Oscar Allen's life and legacy. Tonight, we come together not just to honor Oscar Allen's memory, but also to engage in a critical dialogue about emancipation in the context of food sovereignty. Tonight, Dr. Andrew Rivera will present on the topic From Plantation to Plate, Food Sovereignty as True Emancipation. This topic is not only timely, but also essential for us as Caribbean people. The topic would, among other things, explore the links between historical food injustices, contemporary dependency, and a path to resilient, self-reliant food systems in the Caribbean. Dr. Vera's extensive experience, including her stint as the head of the St. Lucia unit in the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, CADI, make her uniquely qualified to lead us in this important discussion. We will hear more about Dr. Vera's impressive achievements when Mrs. Jamisha Roberts-Daniel, our newly installed program officer, delivers her biography. This year, we hosted an exhibition to complement the lecture by offering a tangible visual, and interactive experience that reinforces the subject matter. Our exhibitors included the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, also Homemade Products, Helen's Daughters, Argyle Markets, and Sam's Production. And by the way, Sam's Production is an alumna of the University of the West Indies. I must commend our exhibitors for their enthusiasm, time, and effort. The Oscar Allen Memorial Emancipation Lecture is part of the UWY Global Campus St. Vincent and the Grenadines' ongoing commitment to education, community outreach, and fostering critical dialogue. Looking back, our efforts included a Black History Month lecture delivered by Dr. Henderson Carter, who is now the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Education at the UWI Keyville campus, and this was delivered in February right here. Then from March to May, we collaborated with 3 esteemed Vincentian historians, Dr. Cleve Scott, Dr. Adrian Fraser, and Dr. Michael Denny, to deliver 3 lectures in commemoration of the first National Spiritual Baptist holiday in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. These lectures were held in the communities of Rose Hall, Kingston, and Calder. In October, we will host our Sir Dwight Venner Independence Lecture. In terms of outreach, even beyond this room, I would like to highlight that our proceedings are being streamed on several platforms, and we also provided Zoom access on request from persons who prefer to voice their questions and comments when we get to that point. In closing, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Friends of Oscar Allen for your continued support and dedication to this important event, and I think they deserve a round of applause. And we have several persons here from the community of... From where? Come on, welcome. Please give them a round of applause. Somebody told me when you mention Oscar Allen, the people will come out, so there you go. Your commitment to preserving the legacy of Oscar Allen and fostering critical dialogue in our community is truly commendable. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here this evening. God bless you.
Well, you're going like lightning. What it means is that we're going to have plenty time in the back to do a lot of discussions, all right? So I will hold it up. Dr. Beckett, I give you a special shout out. Because St. Vincent is my homeland, and we love it a million. Okay, at this time we're going to hear from Ronnie, and Ronnie, condolences again. Ronnie just lost his mom. Ronnie's mom is a diamond woman. So you see the connection. As a matter of fact, she was my classmate. So, Ronnie has been very, very close to Oscar. And Ronnie's connection to Oscar didn't come through Diamond, it came through the church. That is what I was saying when you asked me about Oscar. I would tell you he was first and foremost a Methodist preacher and took the word of God seriously, that he had to love God and love his fellow man. And all his work was surrounding that. So, Ronnie?
Thank you very much, Brother Simeon, for that wonderful introduction. Distinguished sisters and brothers, it's a pleasure to once again share in this very important lecture, and I wish to thank my colleagues and certainly friends of Oscar Allen and all those who have made this possible. I associate myself with the protocol that has already been ably established, and so I shall proceed. credit must be given to the Friends of Oscar Allen for this citation. Over the years, during these lectures, we remembered Brother A, as he was affectionately called, his origins, the man of the cloth, and the educator. Today, we remember Brother A, the farmer. Oscar Allen often identified first and foremost as a farmer, and that identity deeply shaped his activism, politics, and community work. The soil was his anchor, the place where lives, values, politics, and vision for justice took root. From his plot in Diamond Village, he cultivated not only crops, but also ideas, movements, and leaders, seeing in agriculture the truest expression of independence and dignity. Even though he was known as a teacher, theologian, writer, social justice advocate, he saw farming as both his livelihood and a sort of a philosophical anchor. For Oscar, agriculture was not just about producing food. It was about self-reliance, about dignity, and community empowerment. He believed that farming was an act of resistance and self-determination in post-colonial societies. By working the land, people could reduce dependency, maintain cultural traditions, and secure food sovereignty. He encouraged young people to take up agriculture not as a fallback, but as a viable, respectable profession, and I dare say vocation. He modeled this in his own life, speaking proudly of his as his identity as a farmer, even in intellectual and political circles. His early years included service with the Ministry of Agriculture, but his deepest contributions came through grassroots mobilization and the national agricultural leadership. Brother A was instrumental in the formation of a number of grassroots organizations. He was instrumental in the formation of a number of grassroots organizations, including ARWE, Action to Rebuild with Effort, and later in initiatives like Projects Promotions with Cecil Ryan and Caripeda, to name a few. But most importantly, Brother A championed cooperative action, sustainable practices, and the self-reliance of rural communities. He played a key role in the early stages of the National Farmers Union, what was called NFU, serving on its executive for about a decade or so. The NFU existed as part of a wider Caribbean network of farmers' organizations, working alongside similar bodies in neighboring territories. As a committed member and advocate within the National Farmers Union and the Banana Growers Association, he worked tirelessly to defend farmers' rights, improve production standards, and push for fairer terms for agricultural producers. He was involved, along with Renner Groves, in the fair trade a few years ago. His leadership in these organizations amplified the voices of small and medium-scale farmers, ensuring they had a seat at the table in shaping national agricultural policy. In the political sphere, as leader of the United People's Movement, Allen advanced ideas grounded in the realities of rural life and the aspirations of working people. In education, whether through community teaching, public lectures, or his booklet, We Want to Become Wise, he sought to demystify history, empower citizens with knowledge, and connect the struggle for justice to the control of one's own sustenance. For Oscar, true emancipation lay in the ability of a people to feed themselves on their own terms from their own land. His work in farming, farmer organizations, politics, and education was unified by a single steadfast belief. Food sovereignty is not just about crops, but about culture, power, and freedom. The journey from plantation to plate. It is in this spirit that we gather for the Oscar Allen Memorial Lecture, honoring a man and a son of the soil, whose hands tilled the soil, whose words stirred consciences, and whose life's work continues to feed the vision of a truly emancipated people. I thank you.
Every now and again I would interject a little bit about Oscar. Oscar was taking holy orders in Jamaica, but he asked for a year off to go to Haiti. When Oscar went to Haiti, he saw some things that he was never the same again. And it had to do with a lot of issues relating to food. He told me a story of a lady who used to come to church. And she didn't have any money. She didn't have any money to contribute to the tithe basket. So she brought eggs. And Oscar noticed one day, the lady fainted in church. When they checked, the lady was hungry, but she brought her eggs to the priest. So during that year, apart from preaching, having had some experience with the Agricultural Society here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the Ministry of Agriculture, Oscar went around Haiti on a horse, going up into the mountains, helping people to grow little crops and teaching them little techniques. When he went back to Jamaica to resume now after his year off, Oscar said to his bosses, well, in a way, I don't think the theology thing need to go further. I think the Caribbean is calling out more for people who want to work in food and agriculture and see poor people be able to feed themselves and so on. That did put a wedge between Oscar and the administrators, and also did put an end to his career as a Methodist priest formally. Every now and again, a bit of that. At this time, we're going to have a cultural item. Marcella should have been here in person, and if I know Marcella, who was closely knitted to Oscar as a young lady who was growing up in Diamond, she would have made every opportunity to be here, but she's absent. So we have something. I say we have something, not the real thing, but something. Are we getting it? F. Safi, where is it? Okay, Safi. Oh.
Sorry, my apologies.
I apologize for my absence. But thankfully, technology has allowed for my delivery of the piece, When Men Awaken. Before I begin, I must applaud the organizations for their continual effort in hosting the Oscar Allen's Emancipation Lecture. The late Oscar Allen was my dearest friend and mentor, and we both shared a passion for agriculture. I am happy that our focus tonight is on food sovereignty. However, on the road to freedom in any form, it is essential that men first understand who they are and what their purpose is. Thus, I hope that this piece can inspire all of us to look inwards. When Men Awaken. Only when words warp, carrying the weight of truth, and the consciousness of men awaken, will they comprehend what they already know. Until they learn to see beyond what they feel and listen twice before they speak, the chaos of their century will be like lead chained to their sons and daughters' feet. For in their haste and greed and obsession with power to be and remain, they have frowned upon change and men like they who bleed just the same. Not before men regard nature's supremacy and see with their mind before looking with their eyes, will they learn that they sit in their own darkness, tailoring their slumberous minds to be satisfied only with the melody of the ancient call for unity. When their path lead them first to acknowledge their history, then to navigate their own destiny, they'll pound their own rhythm and write their own lyrics, and like rivers filling seas, they'll become greatness. Something much bigger and diverse, beautiful, magically refreshing, yet calmly destructive. When Men Awaken.
Marcella is a young poet from Diamond, and I tell you, Oscar really had a serious influence on her life. I think she's a teacher now at the grammar school. Yeah, she's a teacher now at the grammar school. She has put out the first book, and I know many more books would come. Now, a little bit about Oscar again and food. In the nights when we used to play the drums and you get hungry, Oscar was a man of porridge. And when Oscar say we're going to make porridge, well, we think well, you might send to buy some cornmeal or some whatever. But Oscar would grate some bananas, or next night grate some potatoes, or next night grate some tanya. And try it. You ever eat banana porridge? Special, green bananas. You can't make banana porridge with ripe bananas. You have to be green bananas. Special. And Oscar had this special thing about him, about the introduction of new varieties into St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I remember we had these small ginger. They had a lot of oil and hot, but they were small. And after thought, he saw some nice ginger in Jamaica. We call them the Jamaican Ginger. And he organized a project to bring in the Jamaican Ginger. He was the one who introduced the Jamaican Ginger in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with us, of course, as his foot soldiers. And we planted and reproduced them up in Diamond, and then they started to distribute around St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we have a lot of Jamaican ginger due to Oscar. Another thing is that he introduced some strange things. I think they had some prickles, but they were like beans. Them wild things there. But they were African wing beans. And then we started to read up about these African wing beans and how nutritious they are and so on. And Oscar would find all means of trying to encourage us to use them and to cook them. And then he also introduced a plot of soya beans, which he planted in Diamond. That was the vision of the man about food. Not going, can't go any longer. So at this time, we're going to have Mrs. Jamisha Roberts. Jamisha, I'm meeting her very often now. We used to share a little bit at the community college at one time. And just recently, I met her at a social, and I met her again in Berkeley. And we're meeting again tonight. So, Jamisha, it's up to you now to introduce to us the person who is going to be the center of the discussions tonight, Dr. Andrea K. Vera. It's my first time knowing the lady, so I'm listening to her.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Good evening, everyone. Honorable Sabota Caesar, Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation Industry and Labor, Dr. Risa Noel Barnett, Head of Site, the University of the West Indies Global Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, friends of Oscar Allen, representatives from the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, ECGC, GECU, and National Lotteries Authority, Dr. Adrian Fraser, former resident tutor, the University of the West Indies Open Campus, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, senior public servants, chairperson of the statutory boards, members of the business community, specially invited guests, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Andrea K. Vera is a lecturer in teacher education at the University of the West Indies Five Islands campus in Antigua and Barbuda. She offers expertise in the disciplines of educational studies and the natural sciences. She is also the public orator for the campus. Andrea served as an educator for over 15 years in both St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Barbados in the sciences at the secondary and tertiary levels, and she also publishes in the field. She has also worked regionally in teacher education and adult education for farmers. She holds a postgraduate certificate in university teaching and learning, a PhD in biology, a Master of Arts in Education, a postgraduate diploma in the teaching of science, and a Bachelor of Science in Biology with a minor in education. She has presented at several regional and international conferences, including the University of the West Indies Schools of Education Biennial Conference, British Educational Research Association, EdMedia, and the Society for Information Technology and Teacher Education. Her publications span across small farming, tissue culture, ICTs in agriculture, biodiversity of fruit trees in the Caribbean, agroecology, technology in education, teacher retention, leadership in education, and STEM education. She also started a professional learning community for secondary school science teachers in Antigua and Barbuda. Regionally, she has worked on the teams that designed and executed several regional projects, such as the OECS Value Chain Roots and Tubers Project, Effective Pedagogy for Distributed Teaching and Learning in the Online Delivery, and the Learning Recovery and Enhancement Program administered by the Eastern Caribbean Joint Board of Teacher Education. Blended teaching and learning and the use of Google Classrooms in Dominica. Open educational resources for STEAM delivered to teachers in Antigua and Barbuda. Additionally, Andrea served as the head of the St. Lucia unit at the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, CARDI. during the period 2018 to 2020. Her work at CADI included the training of farmers and stakeholders in roots, coconut, vegetable production, breadfruit post-harvest techniques, as well as the use of the WhatsApp platform as a learning environment for over 150 farmers. She also managed and assisted with the implementation of CARICOM Japan Friendship Cooperation Project, advancing information and communication technologies for climate-smart agriculture in St. Lucia and the OECS territories. Dr. Vera was a member of the proposal team for the regional sweet potato germplasm project and represented the Institute at regional and international conferences, inclusive of presentations at Caribbean Week of Agriculture in 2018. Some of her research interests include conservation practices in agriculture, agroecology, smart agriculture, urban gardens, reflective practice, student-centered learning, educational leadership, STEAM education, the teaching and learning of science, and education in disaster and crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to you tonight, Dr. Andrea Vera. Let's welcome her.
Pleasant good evening to everyone. Protocol already established, I beg your indulgence to move straight into tonight's topic. Is our online audience good? Sound? So first of all, this topic. I was approached by Dr. Noel McBarnett, and the minute I saw the topic, I couldn't say no. This is an exceptionally coined topic that covers two very important areas, and I commend the team highly for that. I am a slave on the sugarcane plantation belonging to Massa Harris. My countrymen are also slaves here with me. We work long hours taking care of the fields to make sure that he gets a good harvest sent back to England. Our days are brutal, long, and tiring. We feel not only the pain of the heat and the physical strain of working the land, but the mental and emotional pain of how we are treated. I am abused in so many forms, but when it comes to food, we are treated like an animal that is given scraps from the pigs, cows, chickens, and goats, liver, kidney, neck, gizzard, nose, feet, ears, and tail, just to name a few. We use these parts along with the ground provisions that we grow in small plots allocated to us. Other times, our massa gives us salted fish or cod, and we make cornmeal from that corn that we grew. To survive, we must consume this and make it as tasty as possible for not only us, but our families. Other times, we eat sugarcane and drink the rum given to us by Massa in order to get through the days. This is just a snippet of the unfortunate, brutal, and devastating reality that was slavery during the transatlantic slave trade. Our ancestors were enslaved, brought from Africa, and put to work the lands intensively for the profits of European landowners and merchants, the colonials. They were subjected to inhumane conditions and treated like animals. The judicial instrument known as the Slave Code passed in 1661, defined Africans as heathens and brutes, not fit to be governed by the same laws as Christians. Africans were defined as non-human, a form of property to be owned by purchasers and their heirs forever. Yet, the Europeans felt that Africans were stronger than the indigenous peoples and were the only ones strong enough to handle the harsh conditions of the high temperatures, humidity, and rainfall from early morning, sometimes up to late in the night. The West Indian sugar plantations were described as the real killing fields, and the slave trade was to provide laborers for these fields through enslavement. Sugar and rum were produced by the blood, toil, and sweat of the slaves. Sugar was shipped to Europe, sold to the sweet-tooth-rich Europeans, and later Europeans of all spending powers. And profits filled their pockets. The European plantocracy, and added to that capitalism, that made it the plantation system. That plantation system provided food on the plates of many Europeans, but led to oppression and death of the persons growing the food. We explore the plantation system and what it meant for the plates of our people then and now. We discuss food sovereignty and how it can be used to break free from the history that devastated us as a region. How we can use food sovereignty for sustainability and freedom from the shackles that once bound us to the plantocracy through emancipation. Plantations in the Caribbean were symbolic of the colonial governance structures and depicted colonialism, which took advantage of our people in many ways, including financially. Our countries were viewed as ideal for cultivation of prized commodities that would bring great profit, as such large land sizes were desirous of plantation owners. There began the disparity in access to lands that continued post-colonialism. Plantations were large, 50 to 300 acres depending on the country. And this was often achieved by the purchase of smaller plots to create the large size that was needed to operate intensive agricultural systems for profit. Smaller plots existed from our indigenous peoples pre-colonialism. Who bought these small plots? White Europeans were the purchasers, as they were desirous of expanding sugarcane cultivation to obtain a profit. During colonialism, the plantation system, profit was the dominant thought by the plantation owners, and they implemented what needed to be done to ensure that their prized whiskey bottles were filled. Perhaps this is why in today's farming and agricultural industry, profit is the first thought of many farmers or food producers almost instantaneously. Money rules the world, right? In the plantocracy, on the plantations, one crop was planted, namely sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, or coffee. Sugarcane was introduced to the Caribbean by the Spaniards in the early 16th century and showed good economic value for the plantation owners. In Europe, up until the 1500s, sugar was a luxury for only the rich, such as Elizabeth I of England, who apparently had a serious sugar addiction. She was addicted to marzipan, it ruined her teeth. And it's just an example of how serious this sweet tooth was for Europeans at the time. And it only grew. As a result of this likeness for sweet, trade increased dramatically, and white colonialists shifted from cotton, tobacco, and coffee to sugar cane in the 18th and 19th centuries. Plantations in the Caribbean produce 80 to 90% of the sugar used in Western Europe. And they used cheap labor through African enslavement to do so. A deliberate action so as not to narrow the profit margin, but instead increase it. Slavery was thought of as essential towards the development of tropical agricultural enterprises devoted to producing sugar. On the plantations were factories that converted sugarcane into sugar and rum. The demand for sugar in Europe was so high, it caused industrialization of the plantations in the Caribbean to take place. Materials and equipment obtained included the use of more advanced mills, aqueducts, canals, dams, irrigation steam engines, increased fertilizer, and better performing sugarcane varieties. Today, these are considered low-level technologies and are still used in some instances. But during that period, this was a symbol of the Industrial Revolution of the future. C.L.R. James refers to the sugar plantation as the most civilizing and demoralizing influence in West Indian development. Driven by capitalism, colonials gained phenomenal profits as the sugar got to the plates of European consumers, while African slaves who toiled from dusk till dawn were left penniless to create meals from saltfish, animal parts, organs, and staples from their garden plots on the fireside. These meals, especially on the fireside, make for some of the most tasty, finger-licking dishes that are now a large part of our culture and, more importantly, our food culture. Any foodies among us? Yeah. There we go. That's a trend in everything, everywhere. Social media, conversations, lunch today. What the colonials considered scraps are now some of the delicacies and renowned dishes that add to our multiculturalism as a region. The dishes that make us ideal for food tourism prospects. The fireside preparation using wood ovens or coal pots. And I'm sure as a Caribbean person, there's no one here listening who will say that this practice in itself does not add a unique taste and special flavor to the food prepared in this manner. During slavery, our ancestors did not have stoves or refrigerators to preserve foods for themselves. So our people found ways to preserve foods, often involving high quantities of salt. And of course, they used the fireside to get the heat necessary. Outdoor cooking was a large part of our food culture and practice. Unfortunately, the high sodium content then spikes our rates of hypertension and is perhaps the reason that many persons cook with too much salt and why there are so many cases of high blood pressure in our country and in the region today. But this is not because the food was bad. This is because our people were not educated on how to prepare these things in terms of the quantities of salt required to ensure that they remain safe and not contribute to a non-communicable disease, whether it was hypertension or a heart condition. We need to educate our people on the proportions, the calorie values, and methods of controlling what is plated in terms of those meals so that the overall final product is not viewed as unhealthy. Because these dishes are some of the prized dishes that are us, they are who we are. There are also extensive inputs as a result of African culture and heritage, as well as that of our indigenous peoples. The Garifuna, our black Caribs, and the Arawaks and Caribs and the indentured servants. Have we ever paused, reflected, and thought about where some of our food traditions and dishes came from? What did you have for lunch today? Where did it originate? How healthy was it? Was it too salty? Is there a balance involved in the quantity of salt and sugar? Was it 5 starches, 1 protein, and no salad? Did the dishes come from the colonials? As Caribbean people, we jokingly say no British native can cook a decent meal. How do we describe decent in this context? It's very subjective, but for us in the Caribbean, it means full of flavor, right? So think about that flavor pepper that makes your neighbor come over and ask what you're cooking. This is something that is special to us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and to the wider Caribbean region. And it came directly from our historical past. Some dove down oxtail, stewed chicken back, liver. And I'm not trying to entice or make persons hungry with some of these photos, but okay. Some nice Saturday sauce of pig trotters with hot roasted breadfruit. Of course, the cocoa bread or the black breadfruit are one of the sweetest varieties in St. Vincent. And these are just a few examples of our unique meals. These can be marketed as a tourism food product. These are things that tourists come, taste. Sometimes they have no clue what they're eating, but they absolutely love it. They return, they want more. These are areas of our past that we need to capitalize on and make it a present and a future. No, our dishes and food traditions did not come from the colonials, but instead they came from our African, indigenous, and indentured laborers, our brothers and sisters. For the most part, 1 or 2 little changes with the opening up of trade and the different markets. And now we have to also think about our Garifuna heritage and what that brought to our plates. And I give you information now that came directly from an elder in the Fancy community and her niece, Tanti Ann Williams Bracken, and Mrs. Clyonique Durant. Our Garifuna people made 2 different types of cassava bread. One from the bitter cassava, the Manihot esculented, which we Garifuna people call biti, and one from the sweet cassava. Cassava pudding, some people call it pone. Porridge. How many people in here have tasted cassava porridge? We have the community from Diamonds. Big up Oscar Allen. For sure, but I'm hearing it only on this side of the room, nowhere else. Cassava bakes. Fungi. Fungi made from cassava and not just arrowroot. This fungi made from the biti, which is the dried cassava product, is added with fresh fish. And usually it's a deep sea fish like kingfish or young barracuda that is used deboned and cooked with green chive and hot pepper. Flavor again. Coconut milk and coconut oil is added. This makes for a very tasty meal. And here we see how prominent coconut, fish, and cassava were to our indigenous ancestors. Sky tea, a tea from cocoa, spice, cinnamon bush, and coconut juice, which we know as coconut milk. This was very common within our indigenous communities' dishes and was also served with roasted cassava during the wake commemorative activities when someone passed on. Sweet cassava was used with flour, nutmeg, and spice to make a cassava bake that is roasted, wrapped in banana leaves in a copper. Where do you think these coppers came from? Grindi was cooked with fish. Grindi dumplings were made. And guinea man, which is what the ancestors called flying fish, corned. Again, no preservation by way of a fridge in those days, so they had to preserve it by salting it, which is the corning technique. It is no wonder that our indigenous people were, and still are, so very strong and resilient. Our plate shows who we are as a people and is a testament to our historic resilience. The hard food that kept our ancestors going during the brutal turmoil of slavery and the scraps of animal parts that became some of the most renowned dishes today: souse, goat water, manish water, beef soup, cattle skin and head soup, bullfoot soup, callaloo soup, fungi with fish or even oil down. The backyard subsistence plots of our ancestors, filled with yams, sweet potato, the ipomia batatas, cassava, manihot esculento, edo, tanya, dashin, callaloo, peas, coconut, breadfruit. They have shaped what we eat today and our existing agriculture. I have not been to another Caribbean island and heard of the million things that can be done with breadfruit. That is special about St. Vincent. And it is something that we have to embrace. In other islands, when I tell them we have a breadfruit punch, they look at me in shock and ask me, please, can you make it? These are things that we have to market and embrace that were handed down to us from our ancestors. They were brought to the Caribbean, unfortunately, from a very tragic period, but they are things that we can now use towards improvements and positivity. Who knows, the verdict is still out even on the influence of yams on the athletic potential of some of our Caribbean star athletes. A good Saturday morning pea soup flavored with a salted meat or even some crayfish. Stew peas, saltfish and breadfruit, jackfish and breadfruit, coconut dumplings, sweet potato pudding. All of these are foods that show our resilience as a people, as a country, and as a region. As we go through the Caribbean countries, we see similar dishes with different names. Fungi, derived, really made from cornmeal and pepper pots in countries like Antigua and Barbuda. Cuckoo in Barbados, flying fish, pudding and sauce in Barbados again. Pudding there is the sweet potato. Bouillon if you're in St. Lucia or Dominica, the salted soup. Oil down if you're in Grenada. Even stew land turtle in countries like Barbuda and Dare. Fried jackfish with breadfruit and provision in St. Vincent, whale in the Grenadines, blackfish in St. Vincent, titire or tritri, titire in Dominica, tritri here in St. Vincent. We have so much variety among our foods that came from our African, indigenous, and indentured labor brothers and sisters. Why not capitalize on these foods and market them as ours? Why not do nutritional analysis and determine the values and caloric inputs in order to recommend proportions that are safe and healthy, not contributing to NCDs, non-communicable diseases? This is where our education is very much needed, so that persons realize the foods are not unhealthy, but the proportions that we often consume make them unhealthy to us and lead to these NCDs. And this is where the education aspect is very, very critical. Incidentally, these are some of the healthiest starches that exist with low glycemic indices. They break down at a slower pace, so the glucose is released at a slower rate, and therefore our insulin production is not spiked. And in many cases, some of them are also gluten-free. That's a whole different market to capitalize on by itself. In some cases, we also have resistant starch in them, things like the cassava and sweet potato. The exception here, of course, from among the historical foods is corn. But there was no education back then on portion sizes, nutritional guidelines on use and benefits. Although during this era, there was no confirmed record of numbers of persons with non-communicable diseases, diabetes and hypertension rates in the region are now presently among the highest. One can only wonder if the high salt content of foods like salted fish or corned fish meats and the inappropriate portions of starches, not the types, but the portions, along with the consumption of sugarcane and rum back then, have culturally spanned generations and maybe has some relation to the high incidence of diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular problems within our Caribbean countries. This is a hypothesis that needs some investigation, so there's research left to be done. Our foods are so unique that we can develop a food tourism sector, a health tourism sector. Let us have food festivals, rum festivals, indigenous festivals, health festivals. Our multiculturalism is so rich in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the Caribbean that we can have a festival a month and promote it in a tourism calendar. The ITEL Festival this weekend is an excellent venture that embraces the foods and cultural practices of our Rastafarian community. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we even have the Sunset Strong Rum. This is like no other. And it makes several friends and colleagues see beautiful sunsets even at midnight. It may not be the healthiest option, but it certainly has historical roots from our plantocracy systems. And if we own it, we can market it from a food sovereignty perspective, along with much needed value addition products. We also have drinks and other plants of medicinal value. Mobiback, seed underleaf, trumpet bush, ginger beer, sorrel, okra. Sorry, I forgot to change the slides. And just incidentally, while we're on the sorrel, on the screen, you will see an example of a value addition product there. This is a sorrel liqueur that was developed in St. Lucia back in 2019, 2020, in collaboration with Cardi St. Lucia. And this took off on the market at Christmas. Again, embracing the things that we grow, developing them and adding value. We also have the okra punch. That's very common in Barbados. You walk the streets and every man on the side is selling you an okra punch, especially if you're a male. Linkage there to reproductive health. Peanut punch in St. Lucia, the one with alcohol and the one without. Sea moss, we all know about sea moss and the benefits. They are wide and extensive. And now, the marijuana, medical marijuana. The colonial system exerted and abused power over lives. But perhaps most unfortunate was the power it had over the types and quantities of food we ate. Our land ownership and usage and our health, our ancestors were robbed of an opportunity to voice their thoughts and opinions on just about anything. Or they might be severely punished, whipped, and even left for death. It is rather quite ironic that food was supplied by the African slaves directly through cultivation and animal rearing, and indirectly through the sale of sugar, yet we in turn had to pay for the same sugar that we were producing, and pay for so many imports. Today, our import substitution bills per country are very high, and one can only wonder if this is yet another generational curse that we allowed to be passed on from colonization. Our ancestors were not educated on proper nutrition and meal consumption yet again, but were instead made to eat what was given to them. The curricula did not teach about sustainability, safe farming practices, self-reliance on the land. And this is a theory that Nairi out of Tanzania spoke very much about within the education sector, and how important it is for a nation to be able to sustain itself by growing what we need. And it takes it on many different levels, but brings it down to utilizing the lands that we have to self-sustain. As we transitioned out of slavery, did we transition in our agricultural practices? Were persons who grew food treated with respect and given appropriate value compared to other professions like law and medicine? How did we allow the plantocracy to affect our viewpoints, our practices, our lives? Have we embraced the areas of food production that can rightfully be labeled as unique to us, the descendants today of our African, Indigenous, Indian, we have the curry crab on screen, the different spices that we use, the roti, and the Portuguese, the salted beef cook-ups, the garlic pork, peoples? Answers to these questions can support the notion that we can attain food sovereignty as a nation and as a Caribbean region. And our dear Oscar Allen seemed to have been the man who envisioned and who's really a symbol of what food sovereignty is. And as I get into what food sovereignty is, you will realize that if he were here today, he can champion this for our country and even our region. So what is food sovereignty? We examine the etymology of the word sovereignty. According to Etym Online, sovereignty derives from Anglo-French souveraineté or Old French souveraineté, referring to authority, rule, supremacy of power or rank, existence of an independent state, a state of character or of being in power. When we add food to this, we are speaking about power with and of food. That is the ability of our people, our nation, our region, to attain full power over our food systems and use these systems to transform lives and livelihoods. Food sovereignty is a holistic system that recognizes the need for farmers to have control of food systems as it is a way of life and a means of producing food. It places value on the contributions of Indigenous peoples, pastoralists, forest dwellers, workers and fishers to the food systems, and allows for a culturally acceptable manner of food production that is in harmony with the ecosystem, and that is direct from an FAO publication. The history of food sovereignty. It came into existence as a way to return and replenish what was taken from the land and environment because of industrialization within agriculture. In 1996, at the World Food Summit, during a debate on how we organize our global food systems, La Via Campesina, the Peasant Way, an international peasant or small farming movement, coined the term. This was done to highlight and institute the recognition and importance of small-scale food producers, accumulated wisdom of generations, the autonomy and diversity of rural and urban communities, and solidarity between peoples as essential components for writing policies around food and agriculture. Through this imposition at the policy level, the damage caused by years of industrial agriculture can be slowly repaired. We're talking about things that affect the soil structure, the soil life, the rainfall patterns, all of those emissions that come from industrialization and machines that then affect the climate, which affects our development and progress when we have our farming systems in place. Industrial agriculture came about during the Green Revolution of the 1960s, when maximized profit at any cost was the motive, in spite of an estimated 44 to 57% increase in global greenhouse gas emissions. The land, seeds, and markets were controlled, with soils severely affected from addiction to chemical fertilizer inputs, which destroyed their resilience and their biodiversity, their ability to replenish naturally. The increase in greenhouse emissions in turn affects the land through droughts and floods caused by climate change. Historically, within our context in the Caribbean, one may say that the industrialization began during colonialism with the introduction of the steam engine on sugarcane plantations, which would have contributed to the greenhouse gases. Nowadays, our practices of constant tillage, lack of crop rotation, synthetic fertilizer overuse or misuse may be contributing factors to soil depletion driven by economic power. Again, money runs everything. An understanding of food sovereignty can potentially adjust these practices. So what are some of the features of food sovereignty? Food sovereignty allows food producers to determine how their foods should be grown. It determines how we produce, how we market, how we give economic value, and how we trade. And this comes directly from that international small farming organization known as La Via Campesina. It is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agricultural systems. Some of the key components, according to La Via Campesina, are the aspirations and needs of those who produce, distribute, and consume food are at the heart of the food systems and policies rather than the demands of markets and corporations. The interests and inclusion of the next generation is defended. A strategy to resist and dismantle the current corporate trade and food regime is offered. A strategy to resist the directions for food, farming, pastoral, and fisheries systems are determined by local producers and users. Local and national economies and markets are prioritized. It empowers the peasant and family farmer-driven agriculture, the artisanal fishers, the pastoralist-led grazing, and the food production, distribution, and consumption based on environmental, social, and economic sustainability. Promotes transparent trade that guarantees just incomes to all peoples, as well as the rights of consumers to control their food and nutrition. It ensures that the rights to use and manage lands, territories, waters, seeds, livestock, and biodiversity are in the hands of those of us who produce the food. It implies new social relations free of oppression and inequality between men and women, peoples, racial groups, social and economic classes, and generations. It recognizes people and local communities as the principal actors in the fight against poverty and hunger. It calls for strong local communities and defends their right to produce and consume before trading the surplus. So we take care of our own first, hence the self-reliance aspect. It demands autonomy and objective conditions to use local resources, calls for agrarian reform and collective ownership of territories. It defends the rights of peasant communities to use, save, and exchange seeds. It stands for the rights of people to eat healthy, nutritious food. It encourages agroecological production cycles, respecting climatic and cultural diversities in every community. Social peace, social justice, gender justice, and solidarity economies are essential preconditions for realizing food sovereignty. It calls for an international trade order based on cooperation and compassion as against competition and coercion. It calls for a society that rejects discrimination in all forms, class, racial, and gender, and urges people to fight patriarchy and parochialism. These are just some of the features of what a food sovereign nation and region can look like if implemented and accepted. It is really a philosophy that can be used to build agricultural policies and practices. So food sovereignty in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the Caribbean region. Now that we know what food sovereignty is and how it works, why it came into existence, how does it now fit into our national and regional context? Can it really work? The simple answer for most right up front would be no. For others, yes, it can, but only if we as a people want it to, and shape it to suit our cultures, our realities. Food sovereignty can help us emancipate ourselves, but it has to be driven at the community level, where food producers are in partnership and harmony together to grow food inclusive of the animal rearing and the fishing. It must embrace the multiculturalism that is our people, from early settlement by the Caribs and Arawaks, Africans from colonialism, and later Garifuna and Indians and Portuguese from the indentureship labor period. It can only be championed if we as human beings collectively agree to maintain social peace. This is a precursor to food sovereignty. If we cannot socially agree and work together and get along, it's not going to work. We have to institute the good traditional farming practices, all while adopting safe, modern agricultural techniques. The social piece is of utmost importance as we agree to work together fairly towards a food sovereign nation and region, one that embraces the traditions of our indigenous peoples, takes the best from our tragic slave trade history, and merge them with the modern practices and principles that work in tandem with our lands as a holistic package. We must agree to work together towards one common goal that is approached unselfishly and through community numbers and land sizes, power and empowerment through numbers and unity. An approach that is similar to agricultural cooperatives can be useful, but at the community-driven level, where decisions and acquisitions are merged and shared, whether it be land plots, seeds, modern techniques of farming, or otherwise. We must embrace, document, and share traditional farming techniques that worked and that were passed from generation to generation from our ancestors. For example, the use of spoiled robin fish here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for pest control of rats in sweet potato fields. The use of the moons to know when to plant pigeon peas to avoid worms. This traditional knowledge has to be embraced, researched, preserved, and passed on to our youths. There are several programs that have started the process of doing this from the Ministry of Agriculture's Rural Transformation Unit. Just recently, I understand there was a summer program that dealt with some of these aspects, including some exposure of the youth to drones and how they can be used in farming. School gardens. I understand that many schools now have gardens where the students and the youth are exposed to food cultivation, and this is aside to the agricultural science on the CSEC curriculum. Backyard gardens. And from the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, we have the Youth and Agricultural Science Internship Program, YASIP, going on. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College is looking at introducing an associate degree, from my understanding, in agricultural science as well. And we need expansion of all of these to be more wide-scale, reaching more of our population, and to embrace the philosophy that is food sovereignty. We must empower our people and blend the traditional with the modern agricultural practices while teaching about the importance of land and natural resource preservation. We can institute the following. 1. A national food and agricultural policy that extensively addresses food sovereignty as a means to food security, inclusive of export and import restrictions that lead to that self-reliance type of community and country. This would also have to include access to lands and insurances for disasters. We are living in a disaster-prone region. 2, continue to decolonialize our classrooms as we decolonize the curriculum to give value and recognition to agricultural science and sustainable food systems. It is time that we recognize without food producers, we would all not be here. The value and recognition needs to be placed within the schools, from the preschool level all the way up. Yes, we have instituted universal early childhood education, universal secondary education. We have digitized the system. We're doing excellent things in education here in St. Vincent, but we need to add more. We need to ensure that the curricula are decolonized and are made truly our own, embracing our historical past and influences. 3, build attractive funding opportunities for community farming with stipulated requirements. 4, continue the reparations movement to attempt to receive resources that can then be used toward food sovereignty. 5, showcase the linkages of food production in strengthening sectors like tourism, health, sports, and agriculture. Introduce environmentally safe agricultural practices through methods like agroecology. This is where we think of agriculture as a part of our environment that must be preserved and conserved. So it involves us utilizing methods that keep it safe, keep it healthy. Not a situation where we are going to have issues with our soils because of bad agricultural practices. Simple things like using beneficial hedges. We can use things like Gliricidia, the Gliricidia sepium plant that we use as a fencing for animals and to feed animals. That has benefit to the soil. It can fix the nitrogen. It can be used as a mulch. There are pest-repelling plants that exist within us naturally that can also be examined. Things like neem, the Azadirachta indica. The Leucaena leucocephala if you're in other Caribbean islands like Barbados and Antigua. That does the same thing that the Gliricidia would do. It replenishes that soil, adds that nitrogen. Reduce our tillage systems to ones that don't compact the soil and destroy its health. And I'm not saying to cut them out entirely, but find a balance. Just like those wonderful meals and the importance of portions, balance is also critical within agriculture. Integration of farmer knowledge into practice. We need to listen to our forefathers, our ancestors, our grannies, our uncles, our aunties, and hear what they did on their farms that worked and document it so that our children and grandchildren would know this is the traditional knowledge that led to higher yields. This is what I used to deal with the pests, and I didn't bring the chemicals into play. This is all an aspect of agroecology. Manures, compost teas. We have the resources, we just need to explore their proper and effective use. 7, introduce environmentally low greenhouse emissions, smart agricultural techniques like smart greenhouses powered by non-renewable forms of energy like solar and wind energy. 8, integrate hydroponic and aquaponic systems that embrace robotic controls. so that the youth are able to see the technological advancements made within agriculture. So they're getting both the ancestral traditional knowledge and they're also getting the modern technologies that we are now seeing and should be using within our respective context. 9, examine the use of artificial intelligence in adding value to products, in analyzing data to predict and forecast yields, to assist with maintaining plant health, disease and pest control, and even the use of robotics to help us do this. Make it attractive to today's youth who know screens from the time they are born. 10, encourage more urban gardens, school gardens, backyard farming through community training sessions led by our food producers, our farmers. Empowerment is critical. And of course, we can pull on some of the young people within our communities who are already doing this and empower them to showcase what has been taking place, what is working, and the benefits that they are reaping. Some of these can come from the Rural Transformation Department's work and the Zero Hunger programs, and supported by our business communities. We need everybody on board. That's why it's called food sovereignty. That's why it's a philosophy. Create community seed and germplasm banks. Create professional learning communities for information sharing. Mrs. Roberts-Daniel, referred to the WhatsApp group that I created in St. Lucia. That was a group that shared knowledge with over 150 farmers, and more than 90% of them only spoke French Creole. Everybody's on WhatsApp. Use it to the benefit. Education again and outreach, very simple methods that we need to embrace. Provide soil testing avenues that are funded through the community businesses. Have them give back. Use the corporate social responsibility wisely. Engage them. Integrate the precision agriculture into traditional farming with drone technologies for monitoring of pests and diseases. Provide water conservation and irrigation systems that show that water is life to every food producer and must be used efficiently. Let's not waste it. 16, promote indigenous foods and practices in the schools and communities. The cassava bam bam. How many kids under 5 years old know what that is today? The same fungi made from the cassava with the fish, and the one with arrowroot as well. The cassava drinks. My understanding is that there's one called tumali, which I would love to find out more about, so if anybody knows, please find me after. It's a fermented cassava drink. The avocado farine balls. The arrowroot starch, that is an amazing baby food, among so many other things. Madongo bakes. Cocoa tea, marbi, dukana, coconut bakes, and the coconut oil, which by the way has origins from Africa as well, with the callaloo. Run food tourism programs that showcase our unique dishes, inclusive of national and regional health linkages to reduce the non-communicable diseases. Provide gluten-free options, adequate nutrition, food safety, and food portion education. Breadfruit. The history of breadfruit, how it was introduced to St. Vincent, and the fact that we now have, back in the last piece of research I read on it, in the 90s, we had over 50-something varieties of breadfruit here in St. Vincent. By now, I'm sure we're close to 100. So this is research to continue. Most people think we just have yellow and white breadfruit in the other Caribbean countries. No. Lots of different types. Dasheen, the blue dasheen, the red tanya, blue food, yes. The dasheen leaves or the amaranth for some of our neighboring countries that make the callaloo, whether it's steamed, stewed into a soup or otherwise. Fried dry, our crispy crisply fried small fish, the jacks, the robin, the dodger, the souse, the tree steamed or as a tree cake, the goat soup, the blackfish, the whale, the wild meats, stewed iguana, maniku, agouti, rame, ital, coconut oil, bush teas, fruit juices, morbi, ginger beer, fruit wines, the strong rum, the medical marijuana. We have the resources. We need to now do something with it that takes it to a different level. By owning this philosophy that is food sovereignty, we take back the power as a people to produce our food and meet our market needs while preserving the multicultural aspects that we gained from colonialism, protecting our pristine environments, taking care of our health and well-being. We can start small and in phases where we first decide what is most feasible short, medium, and long term, and work towards it, again, at the community level. However, this can only be achieved if we unite peacefully and consciously decide to work towards food sovereignty together, so that it can bring with it self-reliance as a nation capable of feeding our own. Again, going back to the basis of that Tanzanian educator diary. And it extends not just to agriculture, but to health, education, and tourism. It's cyclical, one impacts the other. It is up to us, as Bob Marley sang, emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our own. We have to make that first step, or we will not know if food sovereignty and true emancipation can be attained through empowerment as a people. Thank you.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves. All right. This is what you get when a scientist is able to mix and use the pedagogical issues to deliver. What an excellent lecture. And before I go further, I do my normal thing. Because when you give me the permission to do it, I'm not reversing, eh? I have no reverse, okay? 1953, 7 minutes to 8. That's the time? Everybody? All right. How long can we go? That's the decision you need to give me. No. 1 hour? Hour and a half? What? How long can we go? Because this is a big gathering, eh? No more than 1 hour. No more than 1 hour. Is that the decision? No more than 1 hour. So my timing tell me we need to close up. All right. So that's the decision. This lecture was so comprehensive. And it covered a lot of things, and I admire the approach, linking the teaching methods with the scientific knowledge about the issue. I'm going to, in a way, be biased, but that's chairman bias. In trying to focus us on a couple things. Can it work? Are we seeing some semblance of the food that we eat in slavery contributing to what we are today in terms of the lifestyle diseases that we have? It is not far-fetched. Nowadays, most of my work is in church. So there was a thing in the Bible which says, visiting the sins of the father, visiting the children to the first and second generation. And I've thought whatsoever. And I used to say, my understanding of God is that this is not God. And I only recently understood the thing about 2 years ago, when I started to look at a thing called epigenetics. Epigenetics, which means the genes can change in ways without changing the underlying structures. And you're surprised to know what can happen because of way down there. What can happen because the parents encountered the tragedy at New York? What can happen to the children? Children born in the winter, when these foods are available, different from the children born in the summer. It's a whole new branch of study that we call epigenetics that is going on. So, sister, the research is going on, and she pointed to it. Another issue, she was talking about the situation in the Caribbean. And I just want to draw attention to 4 issues. Overlap factors. They're not my words, they are Daphne Erwin Chow. Most Caribbean countries have food importing developing countries. Massive food bill. She alluded to that. In many areas, national food production has declined. Most notable in fruits and vegetables. Think about St. Vincent. And has been replaced with imports. Lack of production means Caribbean people eating a more highly processed, and you remember the sister talking about the salt? What we get? A whole load of lifestyle diseases. Listen, lack of local production is bad not only for economics, but it's bad for health. Agricultural contribution to GDP has declined over the years. I tell you, it's less than 2% in Barbados now, and less than 1% in Trinidad and Tobago. In St. Vincent, in the 80s, it used to be in the close to 40-50%. I think, Minister, with all due respect, it's just about, maybe about 10% now, or less. Yeah, there's a context. I'm not disagree. Because I quoted Barbados and Trinidad.
There's other industries have grown.
Right, yeah.
So there's a context.
Okay. And the sister also mentioned the issue of, well, we're spending a lot of money. We have this colonial thing, is the export and get the money and fritter it away on food imports. So in a sense, only Belize, Guyana, and Haiti produce about half of the food. People say there's plenty of food, but we import more than half of the food. St. Vincent, as a matter of fact, I was looking at a recent research which says there's only one country in the world which can feed itself without bothering anybody, and that is Guyana. And the second country is China, and then Vietnam. So St. Vincent we're bragging about. We import more than half of the food. This is a food country. Yeah, but we're not better than Belize and Guyana and Haiti.
No, I said
crop yields have declined significantly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're just having some problems with the Portuguese yams, and there are issues. In other words, what the sister was saying that we need to have an approach which calls for the unity of all people. And I am just putting to us some of the difficulties we have and we need to look at. That's my initial contribution. I am open now. I'm open now. Mr. Karaila, man. I see you there, Mr. De Freitas. The thought just came to me because I had a relative came back from UK, and he was down here. He wants potato pudding, and he want to make it the way the mother used to make it. So we make plenty potato pudding and sorrel bay and so on. When he go back, blood sugar high like drop. So he came back the next time, and he tells me, I want some bitter melon. We say Karaila, I want some bitter melon, because the doctors up there are now beginning to recognize what all four parents knew. That Karaila bitter melon is a master in lowering blood sugar. Let me hear you. I've said enough. Let me hear you. Who's the first person? Don't be afraid because we don't have much time, you know. Yes? And keep it short, eh?
Well, yeah, two things I want to say, right? Let me go short one. We have a building in town. Because it's wind flat, right? I propose in that building must be named Aska Winfla Building. Right, I propose in that.
No, that brother has been consistent, eh? That is the National Farmers Union had bought that building, the Winfla finished paying for it. Right opposite Lotto.
Yeah.
The building is there, and we're doing nothing. Aska's effort. So he's saying, he's challenging us tonight to do something about Philemon. The man is challenging us tonight to do something about it. All right, thank you, my brother.
We talk about food, nobody talk about abstract food. Ask what is abstract food.
Well, you tell me quickly.
The medium and the performing art. Okay? Because nobody could eat them things. Nobody could eat a sand, but they just prefer it. So the other feed the same. No, well, the point I'm making, when I talk about Aska building, you have an institution in the building that I'm vexed about it because I suffered because the contribution I made to the building. And the institution was thrown out of peace more. And I fight to get them good day. They will charge them a whole set of money. When they hear Kwame behind the thing, they say, now they will pay $3,000. Because you know why? They know if the institution, they respect Casper, Aska, and Jim Maloney student, the building going to be functioning. Because it's a non-year building, and nobody will
Yes, my brother. I have taken your challenge seriously. As a matter of fact, you meet in Mintong and tell him about it. I have already put it to the friends of Aska. Ask them.
Yes.
So we can deal with it. All right?
And somebody have to talk to the organization that did it because
it's all right, my brother. We have to
If they didn't respect people like me, we're going to help the building.
All right.
I want to do the first project and carry them there.
All right.
And I tell them,
All right, my brother. We have to stop now.
Okay, then if they respect people like me, they will own their own building in town.
Yes.
What will they say? People like you go own in town. And that thing have to stop. We have respect one another based on the ladies.
All right, my brother. You have to.
Respect one another and look for ID and we use ID.
Brother, you have to. But you have to stop.
And stop now.
Yeah. First of all, let me say good afternoon. I am Sister Jack, presently a farmer and was a teacher. First thing I want to do is congratulate the presenter on our presentation. But I will like an hour, if possible. But I am going to raise two quick concerns, questions in the context of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I know some people might be upset with what I have to say. Point number one, how can we have at least full sovereignty as to emancipation when probably over 70% of the land of St. Vincent are now lying fallow? That is the university. The other point I want to make is that we have been talking here for quite a long time in this country about an education revolution. Can we say we had a successful education revolution in the context of what we saw in our plate now and in terms of food security? And then we would have observed in this country that a lot of lands were taken from some of the productive farmers and put into, well, tourism as it were. My concern is all these things as I see them have been impacting negatively on your team this evening. And I would like to hear if the presenter has any comments to make in line of what I said.
Certainly she did make, and I'm pointing you, she was talking about, and she was making an important point. When did we transition into this new thing? So, Doc?
Thank you, Mr. Jack. So the first question was, how can we have full food sovereignty when 70% of the land is in fallow? I cannot comment on that percentage, right? But what I can say is we have to think about it in terms of the policies in place to achieve food sovereignty through the land usage aspects and land allocations. And I did allude to that in the points on how we can achieve this. But remember that this is a holistic perspective. So we can't isolate sectors. We have to look at how they can be merged and how we can take from each other to bring it into being. So we have to look at the lands that are free in fallow, what we can do with them, how they can benefit the other sectors, including tourism. You speak about some of them being taken, quote unquote, from farmers for tourism. But this is where the policy initiatives come into play that we as the community have to champion. We have to lead it and say, okay, yes, we want tourism to develop. How can we fit into this as the producer of the food? The tourists are coming to eat. They have to stay somewhere, but they also have to eat. And so it has to be championed from us within the community and then taken to the policy level to be instituted. Okay?
All right. Yes, my brother?
Yeah, good night. And you have a wonderful job. Excellent. We got to remember, right? We're dealing with a regime that mentioned agriculture is have to pass. And they have proven it. You see, all our teachers is gone. The Minister of Agriculture, which I think he don't have any shame, which agriculture give him scholarship to go to school and working for agriculture, and he destroying agriculture because
let me not take it to that level, that personal level.
Our country is badly managed by the regime. Agriculture is gone.
Yeah.
Totally. Sabutu nada. You know what I'm saying? And it is very difficult for we to bring back agriculture under this management. Because this management want to import everything, turn our agricultural land into like carries, give them way to tourism, our tap farming, marijuana industry, give it to the white people, them Reno and Kelly Glass and all those big guys and the traditional farmers and down the drain. It's ridiculous.
Remember, we're not having a political meeting, eh?
Not political meeting.
So let me take it to that level.
The reality of the thing. Because if you can't deal with the reality of this stuff,
Yes.
you will not get the solution. And if you have the bad management, how can you get the solution? The roads, the feeder roads, ain't good. You can't go to your farm. So much penal laws, you can't have a goat, you can't have a sheep. It's terrible, man. And we have the agriculture minister, which is here, I glad he's here.
All right, Russ.
So I only hope he could take back the message to his master and tell his master they're doing a terrible job.
All right. Let me not take it that level. I hear you mention an issue of Prida-Lasny, which is an issue. And of course, you notice the sister made a lot of recommendations, and that is the beauty of this thing. She did not come here and tell us about things. She put herself on the block. She's saying these are the things we could look at. So let's try and keep it a little bit more diplomatic. A little bit more diplomatic in terms of how we deal with this. Yes, okay. Yes, let's go. Next person.
All right. Good night, everyone. Greetings. Glad to see everyone turn out. Question. Can it work? Can food sovereignty work? And we mentioned the importing of our food. And, I wanted to appeal to people here because I like to say things start at home. And in our schools, I think it is very deplorable that we have a lot of corn-based snacks. And I don't see enough promotion where we say, yes, you have days when you say, yes, bring a fruit day and whatnot, and oh yes, we encourage such and such. But how about we just cut out the selling of the snacks in the schools? If we're talking about food sovereignty and being how we say proactive, being hands-on, and we are responsible for such. How about just cutting that snack out of, because okay, we could go where we read on the effects of red dye. We could go and we read on atrazine that is introduced to corn, and atrazine introduced to a male tadpole would turn it to a female tadpole, and we could derive from that. You would derive from that because such is the snacks that are in school. So can we be hands-on and cut the snacks out, promote what we grow, as we say, and such. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me shape the question a little broader. The issue, Doc, you talk about policy. In order to support local production and consumption, what the policy stand on banning?
Yeah, I mean, you really answered it in all of itself. I mean, it's up to us on what we want within our schools. And we have to speak up, just like our gentleman just did, to say, okay, we want to include the local foods, the snacks from them, teach our people how to make the snacks from our local ground provisions, the fish, the different organ parts, etc. There are things that can be made from them that can be marketed. That value addition has to be taught from young. And then included, we have fruits that drop off of trees because we don't do preserves and we don't add value to them and make them into different condiments. So we can do things with these and bring it in at the school level, but tough decisions have to be made because, again, it comes down to the financial aspects. And remember I said profit and money runs everything. So we as a community, a country, have to make these healthy decisions and impose the necessary restrictions to get them in place in our schools. And we can start small. We can reduce the amount of unhealthy imported snacks and increase the local value-added type of snacks into the schools, the cafeterias and the different tuck shops that we have. Okay? So it's really up to us. Part of the food sovereignty is what the community wants and being at the forefront of it to shape it and make it happen.
Who next? Yeah, Doggy?
Good night. I want to congratulate you on a brilliant presentation tonight. I support the brother in the back that in terms of the future health of our society, we need to make a tough political decision, and as you said, everybody on board in terms of the amount of snacks being sold in our schools. I think that in Trinidad, there is a limit on the snacks that can be sold in Trinidadian schools. But in St. Vincent, we allow all the garbage to be sold here. It's also another issue that affects us is the issue of international power and control. They control the media, and they pushed a lot of these foods. They are cheaper sometimes than that what we produce locally, and everybody looks at the dollar at the end of the day. And also in our communities, we have moved away, as you rightly say, from what we were taught and as children and grow up using fruits, mangoes and oranges and guavas and all the fruits. Now everybody is buying something in a plastic bag. And we need to really change it around. And it calls for all of us to do it because, again, as you rightly say, we have to focus our agriculture on feeding ourselves first, not just feeding ourselves, but feeding ourselves in a very healthy way before we start to export. Thank you.
All right, let's take one more, Doc. Yeah. Okay. Come.
Let me say good night to everyone, and I'm very happy with the vibes I am receiving here tonight, because Oscar, as the educator, Oscar the politician, Oscar the agriculturist, liberationist, and philanthropist. Tonight, this event is a wonderful occasion, and I'm very pleased with you, Doc, for the presentation that you have given. I want to look at the agricultural aspect of this thing, because in our upbringing, a lot of the stuff that you have really brought out tonight, we grown on these things. Now, you mentioned a couple of things that I take note of. The use of our local resources. You mentioned the marketing of our local foods. You spoke also about the seed bank, and that is something that I have been questioning for a long time, because my time I spent with WINFA and Fair Trade Organization, we had a food sovereignty and security policy, which covers a lot of the things that you have spoken here tonight. But there's one thing I want to ask, because I didn't hear that from your presentation. You mentioned all the food, the young provision, and the parts for animals, but I never heard you mention fruits, citrus. what was the role of citrus in the days of slavery? And today we are having a problem with our citrus industry. It almost died. Is there anything can be done to recover it? That is one question. You made mention also of the agrarian practices. You mentioned good agricultural practices with the implementation of modern technology. That is a welcome thing that will bring a lot of the youths to agriculture. The declining of the agricultural system in our country has given rise to another industry that a lot of people may not take note of. And it's pretty larceny. It's an industry. A lot of people now is gravitating to thief. And that is one of the things that will affect us in the food sovereignty policy that we will look into go forward with.
Here what you can do. My understanding is that we online, eh? So, and if this thing is stored on YouTube, it means we're going to be there for some years to come, eh? So we have to be careful how we handle it, right? Now, Doc, I suggest that you deal now, and then I don't know if Doc, you there can find some of the questions online, and then we read them out, and then you'd have a second response. So now, and then after we get the. So you can respond to those that we have now.
Oh, I thought you.
No.
Go ahead. I'll respond after.
Okay. Oh, somebody.
Good morning. Good night, everyone. My question is, when I hear food sovereignty, I find no distinction between food sovereignty and food sufficiency. Okay, and so what I'm curious about. When I use the term sufficiency, however, I think of quantities, okay? And so in terms of scarcity of land and all of these other factors that are responsible for producing sufficient food, what I wanted to hear from you, given these variables of land resources, and given the amount of food that we need for, say, 100,000 people, etc., do we have the technologies which could allow us to produce sufficient food, given the shortage of land, etc.? So that's what I'm curious about. How can we actually increase the production to a level that could sustain the population for 100,000 or thereabout? That's it.
Okay, thank you. So the first set of questions from my friend up here, the fruits, those would have journeyed along with the slaves and our ancestors from the indentureship period as well, from the different areas where they lived to our country. Some of them were introduced later as well. There are stories where you will hear of our slaves and our indentured workers having seeds in their hair and bringing them with them as they journeyed over to the Caribbean. And some of these things really then became the fruit trees that we planted in the region, and then the cross-pollination started taking place, and we had new varieties developing, and others were introduced as well as time progressed. But those fruits were primarily exported back to the colonialists during that period. And they did the value addition that was needed to produce the juices that were then boxed and canned and sold back to us, right? So yes, there is a place for the fruits, of course. I didn't mention that, but it's almost obvious. We have mangoes, we have tangerines, passion fruit, plum rose, damsel, so many different fruits that are in season at different times, sorrel. And we can make the fruit juices with those things, the jams, the jellies, the cakes, the different baked goods and the desserts. All of this is value addition that we can tie into the entire food sovereign philosophy. In terms of the citrus greening, I know that there's research still going on trying to see if there are any resistant varieties, and it is ongoing. So we wait and we hope that there's a solution that comes up. In the meantime, we just have to destroy when they are affected so that it doesn't spread. And the predial larceny, that's an ongoing battle. An ongoing battle that, to me, will only be rectified if the social peace and the social justice aspects of food sovereignty can actually come into play. And that means we have to become our brother's keeper. We have to look out for each other. We have to help each other. We have to use the technologies that can monitor and give surveillance of our farms, which means we need to have infrastructures in place to be able to do this. Okay? And then the second question from the gentleman in the back, sovereignty versus sufficiency. Okay. Yes. So the question is really, can we achieve sufficiency? Yes, we can. Because with modern techniques for agriculture, we can go up. We can do vertical farming. We can grow in containers. It's not just a land, but a combination. So when we combine the modern with the traditional, we utilize the lands, but we also pull in the technologies and build upwards, do vertical farms, produce the foods within our container systems. So it's to make these things affordable and to teach our people how to do them and to do them effectively. Okay?
At this point in time, let us hear from our online. Oh, Dr. Fraser, go ahead.
I want to thank you first of all for your lecture, because I feel that some of the issues you raise really should be talking points in our country, should be part of our conversation because they're so important. But I want to just make two brief comments on the breadfruit and the tree. I was amazed reading about how the tree was caught in the 18th century, 17th, 18th century, to find out that the way we catch tree today is precisely how it was caught in the 18th century. That just struck me. And I think that a lot of people weren't even aware that the tree came from our indigenous people, from the Kalinagos. About the breadfruit, it is special to us as Vincentian. Not only was it that it was the first place that the breadfruit was brought, but it was a sort of socializing, has a sort of socializing effect. We find that after emancipation, when the emancipated moved away from the estates, breadfruit became very important in the yards of the villages and the houses which they have set up. And not only that, it was also an area where the indentured servants, the Indians in particular, began to make contact with the Africans. We have seen accounts of that happening. So also I should mention that the importance of the breadfruit during the war years. Well, that would apply to everybody. The breadfruit really has special significance, and the socializing effect at that time I find very important in that the term, for instance, "don't cut down my breadfruit tree," has meaning beyond the breadfruit. It has become part of what we are about and the importance of the breadfruit to us. I just wanted to make those brief comments.
All right. So at this time, let us visit our online audience. Doc, so who have the questions? Anything? Nothing at this moment. Nothing at this moment. All right. Online, if you're hearing us, post your question and we would be able to answer you. Yes?
Good evening, everyone. My name is
After.
Dylan Bergin. I have a lot I'd really like to say, but I know I can't. I don't have the time. So let me be quick. And I'd really like to encourage us to just, for a moment, revisit some of what we heard about Oscar Allen and those of us who knew him well. And a lot of the work he did, the political work, the farming work, and so forth, and try to figure out, in a sense, I'm wondering what kind of grade he might give us this evening. You know, because I'm not sure how many persons in the room this evening are farmers, you know, and so are we having a conversation, an intellectual engagement, as opposed to a more connected engagement with those who, like Oscar, touched not only the political arena, but also was so engaged in the land and how that informed the way he operated. I had a conversation recently with a politician, and I asked him, I said, do you know what amount of money is spent on the import of garlic and onions and Irish potato? He said, no, I have no idea. And this is an elected representative. Eh? I'm not saying whether from one side or the other, but he's an elected representative. And he has no idea. I wonder how many of them have no idea. You see, and I hope the point. I think people are laughing because the point is made. The point is made. And it has to be looked at seriously. I believe strongly that it's not long from now that we are going to experience a serious crisis, or the reality of the crisis that is already unfolding globally, the food crisis. We saw recently when in the United States of America, when this big ship ran into one of the bridges in Maryland area. Very shortly after that, we saw a spike in food prices. You know, I've been out of the country for a very long time consistently, and when I returned to stay, I was utterly shocked and amazed. Still am. I still am, and I've been home for a while now. At the prices in the supermarket. I mean, it's unbelievable. When I grew up in the land, and when I returned and I went to the markets to buy bananas, because I love bananas, ripe bananas, I refused. I could not bring myself to buy 3 bananas for $5, because I fed my pigs with better bananas than they're selling in the market for $5. The point I'm making is that we are really far from feeding ourselves. And if you know anything about history of nations' development, one of the first things nations do when they want to be sovereign and independent, you must feed yourself. So let us take a look at the import bill for food, and let us take a look at the things that we need to produce, and we need to produce very, very quickly, because we are heading into a crisis. And when it hits, we are going to see a lot of people really struggling, no matter how much money they have in their pockets, because if the food is not available, no matter how much money you have, you cannot buy it. And one last thing I'll say, and this is in reference to the gentleman here, and because I heard the comments and I felt the vibes in the room when he spoke, and I thought to myself, maybe he kind of said some of what he said a little on the rough side, the way he said it. Nevertheless, I think it's very important and instructive for us to challenge each other, to have some mature political discussions and arguments, without necessarily being personal, but have the conversation, because unless we can do that, there is no way we are going to really mature in our politics, but also help ourselves as a country to get to the best version of ourselves. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to... Yes. Yeah, let's have Mr. De Freitas, former Minister of Agriculture. Let the mic so we can, the people online can hear you.
I believe that to have increased productivity, you have to have increased demand. And a lot of our young people don't eat the food we produce. Right? So we have to find a way of introducing our food to our young people. Two, the matter of pre-larceny. And I believe there's a solution. And that solution, we have to reorganize the agricultural districts. Not just by name, with structure. So that the farmers in each district register the production in the district. There is an office that where the information will be recorded. The buyers of agricultural produce should be licensed. All people trading in agricultural produce should be licensed. Even the vendors in the market. And if you're caught buying stolen goods, you lose your license, you can't trade. Because the problem is, if you don't have confidence that you can plant something and reap it, you're not going to plant. And a lot of lands are not being under production now because of this matter. And information is powerful. And the onus must be on the trader. John Jones, there I'm from Park Hill. And I have so much stand here. The onus must be on the trader to be able to check the district where Park Hill is located to see the farmers who are registered in producing that particular crop. And I believe if we have it and have legislation with teeth, we would be able to control pre-larceny.
All right. A couple of things before I bring back the doc. A couple of things. My brother there. One of the teaching I learned from Oscar, and he used to always say, theory comes from practice, and then practice returns and enhances theory. So theory is important. These discussions are important. They're not useless. But I take your point that we must practice what we see. And then from the practice, we modify it again and it becomes theory. It's an ongoing pattern. The other thing is, as a farmer, that's what I do now. Sometimes we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we get a bit too complicated. This is a 2x2 country. Are we talking about solutions? You're talking about enhancing the pre-larceny, which is important. We need to do it. But I'm hearing about all sorts of solutions to this theft and crime thing. This is a 2x2 country. Brothers and sisters, if you put a block right where right up Rabacock, anything past there, you stop them, you know. Put one bill of bio, anything past there, stop them, you know. Why aren't we doing these simple things? These simple things. There are some simple things that we can do to deal with pre-Larson and to deal with the crime situation. Somebody was in my house, and we know where they come from. But no blocking to stop them. I mean, there are things we can do. And all I'm saying is that sometimes we think a bit too high. You know, we think about sophisticated solutions when the simple, practical solutions are there for us to get done. Doc.
So in the predial larceny situation is really a large one, yes. It's not as straightforward as is being pointed out. Because to do all of the things that are being suggested means we have to work together. And that comes right back to one of the principles of food sovereignty, that unity. And if we're not united to make it work, it's not going to happen. So that's a critical component for the suggestions, and they're good suggestions that were made for the predial larceny to be dealt with. And the children, about the foods we eat, teaching them about the foods we eat, of course. But that, again, within the realm of the philosophy of food sovereignty, that comes back down to the individual and the community level. We, as the moms and the dads, the aunties, the uncles, the grannies, we have to teach the children. The teachers in the schools as well have to pull it into their curricula, whether it's hidden or otherwise, so that the children learn about our indigenous foods. Lectures like this, and reaching the children at their level so that they understand the history of where our foods came from and what they can do from a health perspective. And then it goes back to the gentleman in the back who asked about in the schools selling of the snacks. So it's all integrated within each other for it to really happen. It has to start with us. Okay.
Yes? We have something?
Okay, so there's a question online on YouTube from Simply Nikisha. Can you comment on what approaches other islands such as Jamaica took in their pursuit of food sovereignty that we can use as a case study as we embark on our journey?
Yeah, to my knowledge, I don't believe that Jamaica has achieved food sovereignty. I'm subject to being corrected on that. So I cannot comment on what Jamaica has done at this point. It's something that I can look into, and we can have another conversation on that. Thank you.
Minister? Minister? Jackson? Hold on, Jackson. Minister, I want to be bold. I think it's your turn.
No, I give it to Jackson.
You give it to Jackson, and then you. Okay.
Good night, thank you. I think the minister wants to make sure he comes after me. I would have preferred to come after him. Dr. Vera, thank you very much. It's good to hear fellow biologists speak to the issue of food security. And there's some elements there of nutrition security too. And I like the way you linked it to questions about health, non-communicable diseases, and so on. In a lot of your definitions and solutions, there was a very heavy element on social solutions, right? And of course, in small islands, 2x4 islands, as you say, policy and politics is major issue in people's life. So while I appreciate the elements, the social elements to the solution, I think macro issues is really critical if we were to really address the issues. So I'm gonna for example, to hear your ideas about, we have a exclusive economic zone, that's the sea, our seascape, right? Really massive zone. In the context of your own definitions of food sovereignty, do you think there's really scope there for us to exploit, right? Really exploit our sea resources to achieve this food security you speak about? And then the question again of how does foreign direct investment, and how do we use foreign direct investment to empower our own locals in achieving food security, food sovereignty, and so on? And the third element, because I'm trying to keep it intellectual, because a year ago, I could have been really free to explore these topics. But now, if I might say some things that might be interpreted as political, because I'm now a politician. So I'm trying very hard to keep it intellectual. So last question to you, Doc, is do you think that the way we speak about these issues have a very limiting effect on our mentality about it? For example, words like sustainable livelihoods, poverty alleviation, they're very tiny concepts, very puny in my mind concepts. And what we really should be speaking to is wealth creation, shifting the paradigm to wealth creation as a transformative paradigm for this sort of sovereignty, because at the end of the day, it's about the quality of life that our resources afford for us. And I think it's time for us to be big and bold in the paradigms we use to engage and to structure our economy and societies to achieve this empowerment, rather than this very minuscule thing that comes from outside. And, poverty alleviation and so on. I don't think it's, I just want to have your opinion. Do you think that's sufficient, it's limiting? Thank you very much. I'll stay right there.
Doc, I want to leave you a lot, because I suspect you might have disclosed in summary. I suspect, so I want to have the minister first. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doc. And I want us to give a special round of applause for an excellent presentation done here today. Not only mouth-watering, but very heart-warming. There are 4 points that I wish to canvass in my brief intervention. And one has to do with what I consider to be the elephant in the room not yet addressed. I was born in 1980, and my parents in the 60s. We are now in 2025, and we're speaking about food sovereignty and the active participation of our body politic in agriculture. But my father told me when I was growing up, I want you to pick up your book because I don't want you to come and walk land like me. And you had an entire generation and generations where our parents told us to become doctors, lawyers, because in their minds, social mobility meant anything outside of agriculture. So now we are speaking about food sovereignty and the active participation of citizens in producing food. The discussion has now gone full circle. And now that the discussion has gone full circle, for those parents who are alive, and for current parents I need to tell my son Saj that agriculture is equally as good a job when you speak about social stratification, about social mobility, as being an engineer and being a doctor. So that's one of the elephants that I want to address. The second one, and just before I move off of that one, if I may just by corollary draw an analysis. Growing up in Sans Souci, I would see lines of people going up my village road with a bag of cloth to a lady named Mag Tibbles to make clothes. Today we are sporting DKNY, and we are not going to the local tailors, and we are not going to the seamstresses in the community. So it's not just about food sovereignty, but there's also clothing sovereignty. See Rashid wearing a DKNY. The other issue I wish to mention, that there was a quiet revolution that took place in 2009, in 2010, when we lost trade preferences, and that wasn't mentioned. When we lost trade preferences, the entire landscape of how agriculture is going to be viewed changed. Because it must be noted, and history would reflect, that the colonial architecture of agriculture, which tied us to the monocrop and to the mother country, did not end in 1979, but was decoupled in 2010. And it was in 2010 that the philosophy that was exposed by former minister who's here, that we must diversify, became real. Because minister spoke when he was the minister, he said, we must diversify. But how do you convince people to diversify when banana was still bringing in $100 million? In 2010, that whole idea that we have to do it ourselves now became real at a totally different level. The last point I want to mention, and I want to go back to Oscar, and I am really happy that I was born in a village where I got to know the man personally. And Oscar would have general conversations in a group, but Brother Green, there were some one-on-one conversations where he will bring out certain nuggets. Oscar did not believe in profit. Oscar believed that if you make a profit, you're exploiting somebody. And I remember in a conversation I had with Oscar where I explained to him that I had a chicken program for the community. He asked me, how would you sustain it? I said, well, when we sell for more and we will make a profit. And he said, right there, I done with that conversation. I don't want him nothing about exploiting, about profit. Now, it comes to the point whereby we are speaking about changing a political philosophy from individualism to collectivism. And the question is, how many persons are going to be willing to participate in that? Because the undertone of your presentation, it was clear that we are moving to a communal approach. And Oscar was that. Oscar believed that we must aggregate the factors of production. A man should come, he give his labor, he give his capital, he give his land, and when we reap, we redistribute it in the community. I had an experience a few weeks ago, I won't say where, but it was right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We were explored with a group of farmers providing to them 1,000 sacks of fertilizer in a community. And I said to them, let us set up a fertilizer bank, because I'm from Oscar School. Ladies say, well, that not gonna work. I say, well, let me explain what the bank is first. I will give the community 1,000 sacks of fertilizer. There are some people who are here today who are about to reap in 2 weeks, so they don't need fertilizer. But there's some people who need the fertilizer now. And there's some persons who just bought fertilizer, so they have home they don't need. People say, nah, give me my sack of fertilizer and let me move on with that. So that sense of community, the sense of cooperatives, all that we will have to address. I just want to rest here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Well, we could read Oscar writing and disagree in terms of whether Oscar believes in profit or not. Yes?
Are they talking about food? Well, I see a lot of food trees gone because I see an orange, tangerine, a whole lot of citrus fruit gone. So I'll have to start plant over.
Yes.
Because no food is not around.
All right. Yes. And I love the final comments to the doc. But to end on something about Oscar, I'll tell you something he taught me. When in my area, sometimes you have to grab a little bit of agricultural economics, and there's this terms of trade, right? And Oscar used to have a simple way of explaining it that up to now I understand. And Oscar used to use the banana industry. I tell you the story. And Oscar used to say, watch, we importing, say, a 4-wheel drive vehicles to head the bananas. And this is Oscar thing with terms of trade. 20 years ago, to buy this 4-wheel drive vehicle, we used to take 10 tons of bananas to do it. And he said, no, it's taking us 25 tons of banana to do it. You see the simple way I explain in terms of trade? How it has gone against people. Because when we produce stuff and we have money, we're supposed to buy and make ourselves better. But what has happened to, in terms of trade relations, is an issue in our food security issue, where the mother country, so what we have now is that wealth is more and more being diverted away from the colonies into the mother country, because the terms of trade over the years has gone against us in a real harsh way. Doc.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be very short. It's been a long night, and I just want to wrap it up and say the whole notion of food sovereignty has to do with how we think. It's not for profit, but it is for self-reliance. It is for being able to sustain ourselves, and then any extra, we look at the profits thereafter. And as the minister rightfully said, are we willing to take this communal approach to get this achieved? That question is left to be answered, and it's another lecture by itself, okay? So let's think about how we can change the way persons view agriculture and food production. At the end of the day, engineering is in food production, so is medicine, so is law. So it's to break the shackles from colonialism of how we viewed it because of our experiences, and create this new paradigm, this new philosophy that we then pass on to today's children, our children, grandchildren. And also look at the preservation aspects and the self-reliance that can come, knowing that should all imports stop tomorrow, God forbid, because of some world war, will we survive? Okay? So keep that in mind, and as Oscar Allen, all I'm hearing about him he was a man for food sovereignty. That is definitely clear here tonight. So it's up to us and where we want to go with this information. Thank you. Have a good night.
Finally, we have a few minutes for somebody to say thanks. And this is to be done by Ms. Sharon Garway.
Present, please.
Good evening, everyone. Psalms 118, verse 29. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. We thank Almighty God, the creator of all things, food, and people, like Oscar Allen, or dear Oscar Allen, who passed away. And we thank him for his life's work. I have to go into the protocol. Have to. Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, Rural Transformation, Industry and Labor, thank you. You didn't have to really come, but you came, you represented, and we thank you. Former Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Marcus De Freitas, we see you, and we thank you as well. Director of Forestry and everyone, friends of Oscar Allen, representatives from the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, our sponsors, ECGC. Get it, cameraman, get it? Brandon, GECU, National Lotteries Authority, and Dr. Issa Noel McBarnett. Heads of all religious institutions, we thank you. Members of the Diplomatic Corps, Excellency, Andrew Bowman, all the way from Ni Hao, Sheshe. Dr. Adrian Fraser, a gem as well. Former head, retired, relaxing, but still doing a lot. Thank you. Dr. Michael Denny, our dear friend as well. Dr. Smallpin must joke hard, Dr. Alston Beckett Cyrus. Our honorary doctorate. Thank you. Senior public servants, chairpersons of statutory boards, members of the business community, everyone, specially invited guests. I know it seems like a lot, but we here at you, we just love to say thank you. Madam Dr. Vera, we thank you for this comprehensive piece. It's complicated, but you made it comprehensive. Stand and give a round of applause. Stand. Stand and give a round of applause. We thank you. That's how you do it, my dear. And this is how we do it. Dr. Issa Noel McBarnett has something just to give to you as a token of appreciation. Yes, very branding, yeah. You have a good brand. Right? Mm-hmm. So once again, thank you. Dr. Issa Noel McBarnett, the staff, everyone, thank you. Mr. Green, you got it. You still got it. I know these topics could be a little antsy, and we appreciate you. Ras, we appreciate you, you know. But sometimes time and place. Time and place. And we don't want to. Time and place. Bless, bless, bless. All right? So everyone, ladies and gentlemen, those online, we thank you. Once again, we will be having our Independence Lecture very soon, October. So we hope to see you there. Thank you. Get home safely. God bless.
Safi, you have anything to tell us? Huh? Okay, Safi and